Well, good afternoon. Today we are on the second Tuesday of the month, and this is the Offsite Construction Series presented by Modular Sure Site. This series is a conversation of experts around the country that talk specifically about things that happen off-site, whether it be modular, volumetric, maybe it be panelization, maybe it be all of the above. But we're starting these conversations because it's becoming more and more prevalent with the industry and what is happening currently with the pandemic that we're going through and other scenarios that are happening in our world today. So thank you for being here. We're happy to have you. I'd like to introduce our partners before we start with our guest speaker. Our first partner is Mountain View Window and Doors. They are exceptional in this space, and we love having them as one of our advisors on projects, and also for being here to specifically help engage with the modular industry and trying to bring a new product out there. Scott, would you like to say anything else on behalf of Mountain View Window and Doors?
Yeah, sure, Audrey. So hello, everyone. Thanks for being here today. I'm the marketing director over at Mountain View Window and Door. We pride ourselves on being the most forward-thinking premier luxury window and door supplier in the entire state of Colorado. So we're very much in the modular game at the moment, doing a lot of window and door projects for a lot of modular homes up in the mountains, but then we also do lots of homes around Denver and throughout the whole state of Colorado as well. So we're glad to be a part of this series. And if you have any window and door needs in the state of Colorado, we are here.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Our next great partner is 303 Development. They're a design build firm. They were a traditional build firm, and about 3 years ago, I entertained talking with Greg KROM, the owner, and now we have converted him. He is now doing volumetric building, and he's also doing panelization. They've done over 300 projects in the Rocky Mountain region, specifically in the Denver territory. So we're very pleased to have them working with us and also as one of our partners. Urban Air is another one of our partners. Urban Air Living provides basically a space that is about 500 square feet that lives more like 800 square feet. They design, build auxiliary dwelling units, which are either granny flats, coach houses. Those are kind of the term of building that they perform. They also have this innovative approach with a movable wall system and also a entertain wall system for a bed unit, which refers to most likely like a Murphy bed. They're really involved in the community. They're a national company. They provide volumetric building capacity. Also, they also do panelization. So we're very pleased to have Urban Air Living on our partner list. Also, we have a huge media partner that I've met several years ago. That's Devin Tilley, who is not only the host, but the brainchild behind Art of Construction. And Scott, I'll let you speak a little bit further about what this organization does.
Thanks again, Audrey. So Art of Construction years and years ago originally began as the media marketing arm of Mountain View Window and Door, quickly transitioned into its own media and marketing platform for the world of construction. Our main arm is a podcast. We have an entire podcast series we did with Audrey in the past called Systems Built Lifestyle. And really about what we say, connecting technology with handshakes. So exploring all the new wonderful technology in the world of construction, but not in the airy-fairy 30,000-foot view way, but in the way where we're trying to create projects right now that we can document to showcase the AC industry, what the future is going to look like, and how you can be a part of it. And so we're also glad to be a part of this series for that reason.
Thank you, Scott. So up next, our amazing and intelligent Dana Spain. I met Dana Spain at the International Builder Show this year in January in Las Vegas, and I was just captured not only by her amazing personality, but her in-depth knowledge of investing, volumetric building, and really how she has expanded this industry. I have the utmost respect for her. I feel like she is one of these trailblazers in our industry, and I am so pleased to have her speak today on not only volumetric building companies and their projects, but also her whole her whole background is just really intriguing, and where she's come from, and where she's really headed to. So welcome, Dana. We're very, very pleased to have you.
Thanks, Audrey. I hope you're not overselling me at the very top of the hour.
I don't think that's possible. So take it away. It's all yours.
Well, hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us. It's cocktail time here on the East Coast, but I am teetotaling until maybe the end of the presentation, depends on how tough the Q&A is. I'm Dana Spain. I'm the Director of Investor Relations with Volumetric Building Companies, but it's sort of a misnomer because I'm also a client of Volumetric and a developer with Volumetric, as well as being an investor in manufacturing. Volumetric Building Companies is 11 years old this year, and we've built thousands of units, not only in the Delaware Valley, here on the East Coast, Pennsylvania, New Jersey region, but also Colorado is our second largest place of business. We built 6 West and are now in the midst of building the Georgetown community of Bighorn. So we have deep roots in Denver and surrounding area in Colorado. And one of our investors, Shaw Construction, large and very respectable and well-known construction company out there as well. So we started in kind of onesie-twosie fill-ins here in Philadelphia as we got our feet wet. I personally have done historic rehabs, sticks and bricks, and then my first modular project in 2015, and then I was a convert. I would never go back to anything other than building modular, and we are all modular all the time. So what we like to look at, and this is, you know, multifamily redefined, we are specifically about multifamily as much as there's still a place in the universe, obviously, for single family homes, townhomes, duplexes, triplexes, which we can build through our network of factories across the country. We are really very entrenched in how to make multifamily modular the most efficient and cost-effective and high quality that we possibly can through both our manufacturing plant in Hamlet, North Carolina, but now through our 29 other factories across the country. Here's a little bit about us. I don't expect you to read the slide. You can read it at your leisure. I'm certainly not going to read it to you. We are a group of people who are just passionate about construction and passionate about the modular industry. We are a burgeoning company. We've grown 300% year to year over the last 5 years and continue to grow exponentially. We've won a lot of awards, which is terrific, and it's always nice to be recognized. But what we really love are both our talent that we are attracting from across the country and what we're being able to do with that talent. So we've become an end-to-end solution. We have a modular architectural firm that we acquired last year in Boston. We have a marketing and communications firm in Indianapolis. We have engineering out of Boise, Idaho. We're headquartered here in Philadelphia, and we have a manufacturing plant in North Carolina. And as I said, which I'll discuss a little bit, we've built a factory coalition of 29 other factories, literally coast to coast, including British Columbia, so that we can service the entire continental United States, including Hawaii. And here's me. So my background is not in construction. My background is actually in retail. I grew up in a family company, a retail company. I left for college, having worked from the time I was 7 years old in my retail company, and swore I would never be back. And guess what? I came back. I went to college and became a translator on the currency option exchange in New York. I speak fluent French and was translating currency options in the day of way before the euro. So I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but you can guess. Came back to the family company. We grew it to 130 stores in 6 states, sold it to a national company. I got into magazine publishing. I have no idea why. Was in there for 7 years and sold that to a national company. And I think really along the way, I've always been in communications and designing things. So with our retail, we were always buying and selling retail centers, designing retail stores, and that was really what I thought my forte was. So a friend got me into residential construction, and it sort of took off from there. And from sticks and bricks to historic rehab to modular, and now I'm all things modular. On my philanthropy side, that's a huge part of my life. I founded our city's and our region's largest animal rescue called Philadelphia Animal Welfare Society, or PAWS. We have 3 locations. We service 30,000 families a year. We have saved close to 200,000 animals over the course of 15 years. And I now run a haven called Haven for female veterans. It is a shelter for those who are homeless or housing insecure on their way back to permanent housing, who are female and are veterans of our fine military. And the money honey is how Audrey knows me, because we met when I was doing an interview with Dave Cooper, who we all might know, because I seem to find money and financing in creative ways to get things done. So in VBC, when we need to expand, we need to do a new project, and someone says, how are we going to pay for it? They say, ask Dana, she'll figure it out. So that's a little bit about me. And what we build. We are community-based, as I mentioned. We are multifamily. We build mixed use. So here in Pennsylvania, as in mostly across the country, although there's been some great trends in super tall timber-built multifamily. Here, we are still at 85 feet, 5 stories over podium, or 5 stories over 2 podium, which we are doing now. So we are building the largest modular structure that Philadelphia has ever seen currently with one of our projects. We do mixed use under podium. We do hotels, mostly garden style, workforce housing, senior housing, veterans housing, which is where my heart lies, student housing, in micro studios, efficiency studios, 1 bedrooms. Here in Scranton, Pennsylvania, we just picked up a job for affordable housing in Washington, DC. And as I mentioned, we're building full communities in Colorado. Here are some of our recent projects. 6 West I referenced, you might be familiar with it, in Colorado. 4125, which has become a case study for our micro units, for not only for students, but branching out also into senior, disabled, veterans, female head of household, and Dwell, which was actually a project that we partnered with, which is half stick built and half modular, which, if I can be candid with the crew here, I would absolutely not recommend ever, because although we did save them $7 million on the project cost, the on-site construction was a bit of a nightmare. For those of you who know, building CMU towers and then having to swing your modules around those towers is not ideal. 4125 was the ideal project because it's a pad site. We had enough space on both sides for our crane set and our pick. And we set the entire building, as you can see, 75 modular units. We set in 10 business days and only lost a couple days because of wind shear and some driving rain. And 6 West was an interesting project because we're in the bowl outside of Vail. So the modules traveled an average of 1,800 miles to get to the project site, and we still saved the developer almost 20% on their project costs. So when you look at 6 West and Dwell, they're a little bit of outliers. It's just included here to show sort of the breadth of what we do. 4125 is more in our sweet spot. And when you come right down to it, with full finishes, amenities, an underground parking garage, green spaces, a roof deck, and a dog park on the roof, we averaged about $177 a square foot finished from shovel in the ground to CO. What we're focusing on now are our rapid housing solutions of affordable and supportive housing. We all know that we had an affordable housing crisis before the COVID pandemic and the economic downturn. And now, if you're in any major city and some rural areas, you know that we have a significant problem before the call started, we were having sort of an ex parte conversation here in Philadelphia. We have 2 homeless encampments, one of over 130 tents, another of over more than 45 tents. And the city can't figure out what to do with these people who are truly homeless or housing insecure. Some people who have taken now to squatting in vacant city locations as opposed to building something that is respectful, safe, quality, and that eventually can be financed either by the city, municipality, or by the people who are living in them. So what we designed originally was what we called a supplemental care unit, which would be an alternative to a FEMA trailer. So if those of you who are familiar with that, a FEMA trailer has no residual value or very little. They spend $65,000 to $85,000 per trailer. They use it for that particular emergency, and then it is sold for pennies or discarded, potentially recycled, most are not. What we thought is, if we can build those things in modular and have them as a building block, then after a pandemic or a natural disaster, a flood, a hurricane, I don't know, at this point, plague, locusts, what are we going to see in 2020, right? But we could take that same building block and then reuse it as a building block for a multifamily building, thereby saving the ROI on the taxpayer dollars that go into the supplemental housing during the crisis. As you all know, because you're in construction and have to deal with your licenses and inspections and the politicians, everybody looked at us and said, hey, that's a great idea. Let somebody else try it first. We don't want to do that first. We don't want to be the first in. We don't understand it. Sounds like a good idea, but maybe the next disaster. Come back to us with the next disaster. Maybe we'll be ready. So what we did is we looked at, okay, we have a supplemental unit. Let's look at its end use rather than its COVID use. So for affordable housing and supportive housing, and the only difference between the two are affordable is, you know, what the name implies in the term of art is that it's independent living and it is a full kitchen and living room and private ensuite in your own living area, as opposed to supportive, which has supportive services, which may be a full apartment or might be shared bathrooms in the hallways, but has room for programming and supportive services. It might be a housing project for homeless or drug addiction recovery, seniors who need special programs, veterans who need special programs. And that's what we've been focusing on now. And that's why we put together a coalition of factories across the country. This is our supportive housing. Oh. And this just tells you, I mean, those of us in the modular industry and volumetric and panelized, we know this. This is, you know, just kind of adding on to how time efficient we are from the start of a project to the end. With VBC and our coalition, we can handle a project from the site plan all the way to project delivery and everything in between. And then of course we have our partners. Audrey does some of our sets. Shaw Construction oversees some of our GCing out in Denver. But we like to oversee the entire project from end to end, and we complete 6 to 10 months before a traditional site build. And that's sort of a background. So the real reason that Audrey asked me here is because of the money honey factor. So this is going to be interactive, I hope. I know most of you are on mute, but Audrey, how do you handle interjections while we're going through these remaining slides?
So that's a great point. Why don't we, if anybody has any questions or would like to participate, there should be a little chat box if you want to put your answer in the chat box, or if you feel like it's the time where we're not interrupting Dana, then just let's ask the questions, because I think the more interactive and the more questions that we can proceed through this conversation, the better for other listeners and people that are watching.
As long as you don't ask my age or my weight, I'm pretty much willing to answer.
We're good.
Although my age is out in the universe, so I guess that, you know, if you Google me, it's out there somewhere. And I can't hide it anymore. I'm embracing my 50.
I just joined the club, so we're there together, sister.
Okay. Um, so creative financing, and we've worked through this. This is not, this has, once we get further in, it's more specific to our industry, construction and modular. But I will say that what I'm going to go through in terms of the platforms for creative financing are not limited to what we do. They basically can be extrapolated to basically any business. And it depends on where you are in your history and development of your business, right? And how much risk reward appetite you have. And then, to be completely frank, how desperate you are for cash. So the most linear and straightforward is a sale of equity. The pros are you have cash in hand, your board development and expertise, and your shared guarantees and responsibilities. So you have a widget, or you have a modular multifamily project, and you say to your friends, family, their friends and family, and we're not talking about PE or VC at this point, we're really talking about your angels, not even an official angels group, but the people in your network, where you can go and sell small tranches that equate to bigger pieces of equity, because people are coming in and taking a risk. But what they're doing is giving you cash that you can spend on this project to get it off the ground. You're hopefully surrounded by people who have experience and expertise that you don't. So if you are the construction person and you are very well versed in IBC and all of the various local codes, right, and hoops of fire that you have to jump through with your municipality to get this project off the ground, but you have somebody who is an accountant and somebody who's a lawyer and somebody who is a PR and communications person, then you're building your board and you're building your expertise and you're surrounding yourself with skill set. There's also, when you start selling equity and you go out for traditional financing after the fact, which is going to be the back end of any large construction project, those people are sharing the PGs and they're sharing the responsibility of the entire project. So there are a lot of pros, but what did you give up? Well, you gave a discount on future earnings, because the more equity you control, the more you're going to benefit on the back end when you refi or you sell this project or business or anything else. The loss of control. So when somebody comes on as an equity member, often they have a board seat and or a vote. And unless they're getting a big pref return, then they're going to want a board seat or a vote. And do they get control if in fact you've sold, and I would never, ever, ever, ever suggest selling more than 49%, but say for the sake of argument that you have, can the rest of the board members that you've brought on, that you thought were friends, and they are family, turn against you and take over the project just at the point where it's becoming profitable? So you have to be mindful of your discount of future earnings, your potential loss of control, and analysis paralysis, which we always call too many cooks in the kitchen. There are so many times that you're bringing somebody into your project, especially in the friends and family realm, and then you sit around Thanksgiving dinner, you're having cocktails or a beer, and everybody has an opinion of where the money should be spent, how it's coming back, how fast it's coming back, and it leads to not only arguments, but the not being able to make a decision in moving the project forward, especially when you're in a position, and we all know construction never goes smoothly. So there's always that 11th hour, whether it's a field redesign, or we need to spend a little more money, or we need to pivot, that there are too many cooks in the kitchen, too many opinions, and too many people to please. So I always caution people, because equity is something that you have an abundance of. You're going into a project where you own everything. You've bought a plot of land for a little bit of money that you had on hand, or from a little bit of money that you borrowed from your own line of credit. And what you have is equity. And it seems like a good idea to bring in money and sell that off. I would just say that you have to look at the long term, and make sure that what you're selling it for and what you're giving up really makes sense at the time. Do we want to have questions on that before we go on? Because I would tell you in personal experience, and one of the reasons that I was brought on to BBC is that Vaughn, when he was building the company, was constantly piecing off tranches of the company until we laid it out a full strategy of what the company was to become. And when he saw that within 10 years we would be a $500 million company, he stopped selling equity.
Very interesting. So when you are looking for your partners, how do you recommend finding good partners?
So in the essence of the sale of equity, and we'll get into higher levels of PE and VC, but the sale of equity at this point, and this particular slide is addressing, is really your closest circle. And you want to make sure that that closest circle trusts you and you trust them, and trust is, you know, it's vague and a tenuous word, but you're looking for people to be your partner who trust that you can run this project without their opinion and having to please them, that they're bringing something to the table in terms of expertise. So that's friends, family, and local experts in the field that you feel comfortable partnering with. We did a big historic rehab here. It was a $28.5 million project. We were looking for equity. Our GC put in a little bit. Our community management team put in a little bit. Some friends and family put in a little bit. And from our perspective, it was them to have skin in the game for the GC to finish the project and to be on board all the way through. So he had something to lose as well, but he was bringing his expertise in historic rehab. Other people were interior designers and they were bringing their expertise. So it was more of a skin in the game than mostly a risk reward. And other times it's just that you have friends that are want to be in real estate, but they don't know anything about it. And they know that you know something about it and that you can be successful. And so they're going to back you.
Gotcha. Very good points. Is there any other questions on this slide? All right, we're going to keep mesmerizing them with your
Okay, are we all still awake? Is anybody drinking yet?
That's good. This is exactly what we're looking for.
So limited investors, and these could be the extensions. So you have your friends and family are here, and then you have your limited investors who might be friends of friends and family of family, and your local angels group. They exist across the country. Some are hush-hush and sort of passed down by whisper down the lane, and some put out that they're interested in being limited investors. Again, the pro is cash in hand and cash for growth. So the cash in hand is obviously, the cash for growth is that often with limited investors, they have first right of refusal to be in your second round and your third round, and you're building their interest, but you're also, when you're showing them the returns, they're telling their friends who are in the same space. So the growth is exponential from them. Again, you have board development and expertise. You don't want to bring in people who aren't adding something in the collective with their skill set. And then you have the opportunity for a future buyback or second growth, which means that unlike equity investors, these can be investors that are getting a pref return, and then they're diluted out over time, or there's a buyback at the end of whatever your project round is. And then you can go back to them and say, would you like to stay in and reinvest? And that's your second growth round so that you can get even larger. The cons are tax allocation. Often limited investors come in and they are getting a pref return, but you as the equity owner are responsible for all of the taxes. It doesn't sound fair, but it's the way it is. So for you to have the opportunity to keep the equity, you are often giving up both tax allocation and distributions or your cash flow waterfall. So the investors are going to get their pref return first, then they're going to get their equity returned to them, all before you see a dime. Upside, you still own the project. Downside could be a couple years before you see any cash coming into your pocket. And if the project is actually making money and you're not seeing distributions, you could still be on the hook for a tax allocation that you're not getting the cash to cover. Now, this all comes down to what your operating agreement is and what your subscription agreement is and your private placement memorandum. This is all internal. This is not SEC regulated, although it's advised that you file blue sky reports. It is not SEC regulated. So it all comes down to what you're offering and what the investors are willing to accept. The tax allocation is a biggie. Distributions and cash flow waterfall is a biggie. And the third, depending on how large your investor is, could be springing controls, which means that in essence, it's like a personal guarantee, except that the investors as a group can come in and kick you out. So you end up owning the project, but not running the project. And that is a recipe for disaster because these investors, by and large, are not in the business that you're in. They don't build buildings, you build buildings. So be careful of springing controls. There's strings that are put on in the very, very fine print of investors' subscription agreements and operating agreements that say if they think that you're not running things to their satisfaction, that they can come in and wrench control of the project from you.
So basically, question on your tax allocation and talking with someone like that, it's really important to have, like when you were talking about your expertise, really having somebody that understands contracts, somebody that really understands like a CPA. I mean, you're really looking for those type of board development and expertise on doing something like this, right? Is that like the first sought after thought when you're putting together a limited investor group?
Absolutely. Just make sure that the CPA or the lawyers are not the investors themselves, because they're not going to be as transparent as somebody from the outside building on your board who can look out for you. But I will tell you that it is extremely important to have a real estate attorney and a real estate versed tax accountant. For us, for example, we have an investment portfolio, we have a fund that we put together to finance the purchase and improvement of our manufacturing plant, which is in an opportunity zone in North Carolina. Opportunity zone law is brand new and is very, very niche. And so we had to find lawyers to protect us and also protect our investors' investments, because they're investing in an opportunity zone, to preserve their cap gains taxes, both to push them off and then eventually, if they're in with us for 10 years, not pay any cap gains, not only on the money that they put in, but any money that is the difference between the money they put in and how much their shares are worth at the end of 10 years. So there is a huge upside if it's done correctly, that there's an awful lot of downside if it's not done correctly. So we have very specific accountants and very specific lawyers to the opportunity zone. When you have an investment fund coming in, you want to make sure, especially, that you are not acting as a broker dealer, which has a lot of SEC rules around it, that you are not being qualified as a fund that could be under SEC regulations. So yes, that's a long answer to a short question, which is you want to make sure that you are surrounding yourself with true expertise in the fund that you are putting together with these investors, and that your private placement memorandum crosses every T and dots every I, and your subscription agreement does the same. And just as an anecdote, when we were putting this together, the private placement memorandum that came back to me, it tells investors about 1,000 reasons that they shouldn't invest until you get to like the last page that tells you what you're going to get from your investment. And I read it, and this is not my first rodeo in terms of investment, but it's the first time that I've been putting out a PPM. And I said to the lawyers, you realize that we do want these people's money, right? You're telling them 1,000 reasons not to give me their money, and yet we want their money. Is there any way around that? And they said, no, this is, it's this thick. Yeah. And these are all the things that you have to tell people. You can lose your money today. You can lose your money tomorrow. You can lose your money next week. Just because we made money this week doesn't mean we're going to make money a year from now. So it's really important not to do it yourself and not to do it on like legalzoom.com. It's really important to both for investors and if you're selling equity to protect yourself. This is a cover your backside move, and make sure that there are tax allocations that are not going to bury you, that there are waterfall distributions that you're going to actually see money, and that there are no springing controls that can take your company or your project away from you.
It's a lot to know, and it's really interesting that you are speaking specifically about that, because I think the more transparent you can be with people and really show them what's really the opportunity of what happens, that creates a better form of communication all the way around as well.
True.
Another question for you on that last slide, if we could go back for a second. Do you see investors be more willing to negotiate on springing control if you have some of your original angels move on to the limited investor round?
It depends on who's asking for the springing control, but yes, if you're bringing people from a first round to a second round, and they can stand up and say, yes, we've had this success and we're willing to reinvest our money or even put more money in, then you have a better platform to negotiate down springing controls. Springing controls are usually your lead investor who's throwing a lot of money at you. And it's probably a number that seems like an awful lot of money at the time, right? But they're saying, well, I'm going to be the lead investor by an extra X million, and so I need something to cover me. And what I've said to my partners here at VBC in the past, and I'll share with you, is it seems like a lot of money now, but at the end of your project or in 5 years in business, it's going to be a blip on the radar. So don't give up that control. It's a very sweet looking, tantalizing cocktail of money, but it's in the here and now. So unless you're desperate for that money, you politely decline, and mostly they will come back. And if they don't come back at the same tantalizing amount of money, maybe they come back $1 million less, $2 million less, and using, round numbers. But as long as you control the trajectory of the company, you're going to be in a much better place than taking that extra $1 million.
Right. Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
It does. Yeah, that does very well.
Thanks for the question. Keep them coming.
Okay. So we have our traditional lenders, and everybody's familiar with them because we all use them. What's good about them? It's a straightforward process. It's a check in the box mostly. It's the same paperwork that you've done 1,000 times. Right now, interest rates are ridiculous. If you have the opportunity, especially on construction loans right now or a refi, if you can do a HUD loan, a D4 HUD loan, they are settling sub 3% interest, 30-year AM. I mean, it's stupid money. Even if you don't need to refi a project because it is free money at this point. It is a 30-year AM. The last one that I saw that just settled here was 2.85%, 15-year term. It's ridiculous. And a HUD D4 also has a high LTV. If you have owned the property or the land on which it sits for 3 years or more, you can have up to a 90% LTV or an LTC, depending if you have constructed it or you're going into refi. Favorable AM, as I'm saying. So right now, the traditional lending process is silly. It's if you have a partner bank, and if you don't have a partner bank or several partner banks, find a community bank that is doing HUD D4 loans. I stay away, and we as a company stay away. Now we're in several states. We do not use any big box banks. Big box banks. Say that 5 times. Big box banks. We don't use Wells Fargo, PNC, TD, Citizens. We don't use any of them. We use community banks, because community banks often make their decisions right in the office that you're dealing with, right? So if you work with PNC, for example, out of Philadelphia, they're going to Pittsburgh or they're going to Charlotte for their answers. The people in Pittsburgh and Charlotte don't know me in Philadelphia. The people at Wilmington Savings Fund Society, the people I'm talking to, they're the decision makers. The people at Huntington Valley Bank, the people at Pinnacle out of Charlotte and Raleigh, North Carolina, the people I'm talking to are the decision makers. So if you don't have at least 2, and I would suggest even 3, community banks where you're talking to the person who's going to walk it in to the lending community, the lending committee. Promise I'm not drinking yet. Maybe that's the reason I'm stuttering over my words. I should be drinking. Honey, pour me a tequila. I'm going to get better. If you don't have those people, you need to find them. And they're not tough to find. And right now they're desperate to lend money. Now, a lot of the community banks were in the PPP, got very much involved with the SBA. And since that has sort of come to the other side, they're looking to give you money. It is one of those times where people are looking to give you money. So go out and do some research on your family-friendly community banks, if you don't already have them in your region, and set up a relationship with them, because the time is now to refi and the time is now for construction loans. A lot of them are going to give you IOs as well. Right now, there is an availability for 2 to 3 year interest only loans. Okay, and again, we're talking at 3, even if we get crazy, let's say 4%, let's get crazy and say you're at 4% because you don't have a relationship with your community bank. But you can pull in a 2 to 3 year IO. That means that you finished your construction and you still have at least a year runway, sometimes 18 months of runway, before you have to make the difficult decision of whether you're going to perm out or whether you're going to sell the project. So now is the time to have that runway. We're doing a project, which is a co-living project. It's a little strange because it is co-living. It's like adult dormitories. It's called the Quarters, which is like a WeWork for living. I didn't love living with people in college 30 years ago, so it is certainly not for me. It sounds perfectly terrible, but people love it apparently. And so we're building a building which is 74 market rate units that have been turned into 186 bedrooms. It's master leased, which means that the building is stabilized before it's CO. And we started to shop perm, and we started to shop selling the building on CO, which is a couple months away. And the market is a little tumultuous for this co-living sort of concept. And we said, okay, well, we have 18 months left on an IO at 4%. So we're just going to sit tight, bring in the cash flow, start paying ourselves back, and then we can revisit it after the fact. So traditional lenders can be a good thing. I know that in times past, if you go back 4 or 5 years, it was a little tighter and a little stranger. And obviously in 2008, when everything went sideways the first time, it was tough to get a penny out of a traditional lender if you weren't putting more money into their bank than they were lending you. Now that is not the case. Cons, personal guarantees. Avoid them like the plague if you can, but in most cases, especially with a traditional lender, there is going to be some sort of PG. To the best of your ability, limit that PG or have the PG burn off over the term of the loan as you pay the loan back. Lenders are all not created equal. As I mentioned, we do not do business with big box banks. We do not do business with people who are checking the box banks. We do not do business with people who can't make a decision, who give you a slow no as opposed to a fast yes. And they may limit your growth. Community banks, traditional, they all have legally, federally, they all have a limit of how much they can lend to you as an entity. And in some cases, especially the community banks, to you if you are part of other entities. So say, Renee, you are doing project X and you have taken out a $15 million construction loan on project X. And then you come and say, hey, Joe, I really need a line of credit because I'm growing my business and I need some cost of goods, right? I need some raw materials to grow my business. to start the next project. And they say, okay, Renee, but our cap per customer is 16.5 million. You're already at 15. We can lend you another 1.5 million, but then we're at our federal cap. So some of the community banks, they get to a point, especially when you're doing a lot of business and they want you to do a lot of business with them, then you get to a point where they're maxed out. What a good community bank relationship will do is we'll sell off pieces of their portfolio of yours to other banks so that they can free up some space. So say they've given you a line of credit and you come back and you say, now I need to refinance another project. If your line of credit is good standing and has good terms, they might be able to sell that off to another community bank and open up that cap for you. Or they're going to say, we're at our limit, but we'd like to participate out with Jill's cute community bank. And they'll stay involved as the liaison bank, but they'll take a second position to a participation with another bank. They're going to keep you as a customer, but they're also going to help you with the needs that you have to grow your business and to keep liquidity and cash flow coming in so that you're not stuck. If ever a bank tells you you're at their cap and they're unwilling to introduce you to a participation or even to another bank altogether, they're not your friend, and you need to find a new partner. Now, the best part of all of this, do I have another slide or am I done here? Oh, MEZZ and bridge debt, yeah. Before we get into that, the best part of sort of what I've discussed is that they're not all mutually exclusive, right? You can start with your friends and family. Then you can take some investors. And you can also then go to traditional lenders. So it's often a marriage of one or two or sometimes three of these concepts all together. And it depends if we're talking about the business that you're building overall. Oh, look, my hand is, sorry about that. My hand disappears in the background. It depends if we're talking about a project, which is usually just your equity and your traditional lender. Or we're talking about the growth of your entire business, which could start out with your friends and then take on some investors and then take on a traditional line of credit. So, you know, these are not mutually exclusive. The way that I'm presenting them seems that way, but I want you to know that there's an intersection of all of these different things, and they all come in at different levels and different times of need. It's just I'm presenting them so that you know the pros and cons along the way. And you know what to look out for as you're bringing in these various tranches of funding. Okay, last one. This is something that I would tell you is when you've hit a brick wall or you're doing a project that is so far above your financial means, but you know that it's going to be a home run that you just can't pass up. Otherwise, I would tell you, much to my MEZZ and bridge debt friends, much to their chagrin, I would tell you, don't ever do MEZZ and bridge debt. It is wildly expensive. Personal guarantees, you may as well be mortgaging your cat, okay? Because they will take everything. They take things that I'm not even sure is legal to take. They will ask for your spouse's signature. They will ask for your dog's paw print. They have fine print and springing controls out the ear. It's egregious what they put in terms of not only the origination fee and the satisfaction fee. You pay them off and they still charge you a fee. It's double digit, even in this economy, double digit interest rates. And if for any reason they find you in malfeasance, there is escalated rates, default rates, fees, legal fees, I don't know, buying them steak dinners. I mean, they just add everything in there. Those are the cons. Having said that, what are the pros? Well, it allows for instant growth because they will give you a lot of money fast. Aids in a pinch for the same reason. Like if you need $10 million in 30 days or fewer, and you're willing to sign your life away and your husband or wife's life away and your dog, they'll give you money, and they'll give you money fast. It also builds a relationship for outsale, because most of these MEZZ and bridge debt financing companies represent really large portfolios. That's where they're getting their money in the first place. So if you have successfully paid them back all of their money, plus, but you have paid them back, they're the first people that you go to and say, I would like a 5 cap for this building, and they will find you a buyer because they know what the building is and what you are, and they will help you with that out sale. So if there's any real long-term pro, if you say, I can handle 12%, I can handle a 2% origination fee, I'm going to mind my P's and Q's, I'm never going to spring the controls or have to personally pay this back because I know that this is a winner. Well, they're going to give you a lot of money in a hurry, and then they're going to help you sell it at the out sale. So that's MEZZ and bridge debt. I caution against it, but it's there for a reason, and it's super popular for a reason. So, you know, it's kind of an enter at your own risk, but and I've done it. I can honestly tell you, I've been on both sides. I've been a hard money lender, and I've been a hard money borrower. And it's much better to be a hard money lender than a hard money borrower. So that's a true story. I've done both, and it's ugly. Public-private partnerships. So this is something that I added actually at the 11th hour, and I know we're running out of time, but I wanted to share with you. This is things that we're doing with municipalities. Partnering with the city of Philadelphia, we are negotiating a master lease of a building that we have yet to build, specific for homeless housing. So we can underwrite the financing, private financing of a big homeless shelter populous supportive housing project, because we're going to have a 20-year lease with the city, and that's what the banks are underwriting to. So partnering with a municipality, you're the private, they're the public. Also partnering with a charity. So we're doing a partnership in Scranton, Pennsylvania. It's in an opportunity zone. It's also going to be homeless housing. The last stage of a program from homelessness to permanent. We will be your first permanent home coming out of homelessness, having gone through a program. And we're partnering with a charity. The charity is partnering with the municipality. So we're financing. The charity is, again, taking a long-term master lease that we underwrite to, and they are then charging the city for their services. Shared expertise and responsibility. I build buildings. I do run a small homeless shelter, but I can't run a homeless shelter with 140 people. I would have no idea how to do that. So the shared expertise, I build the building, and you bring the people either through the charity or through the city, and you're going to manage the building. I don't do property management. I just build stuff. More creative than other financing options, because people are willing to see and take the rating of a recognized national charity or a municipality, not just Dana Spain and my signature, but they're looking at the bigger picture and the master lease that they're underwriting to. The PR possibilities are endless. You are making money. This is a for-profit venture, but you're also doing a community service and adding to the social impact of your community. So the PR possibilities are endless, not only for your market rate and your for-profit, but for replicating that community involvement across the country. And frankly, for our perspective, we're not making very much money on this. It's still a profitable venture, but I love the opportunity to address the homeless crisis across the country and the affordable crisis across the country. So when our prototypes go up and we can then pitch them to other municipalities and have our other factories and our other partners really make an exponential impact, that's very exciting to me. Cons, as you guys already know, red tape, hoops of fire, length of process, how long does it take bureaucrats to make a decision? Are we to code? Does L&I care? Where do the unions sit with this? You know, who's your champions? Who are your detractors? The financing and building requirements across the country. Here we have PHFA, which is our Pennsylvania Housing Finance Authority. Every state has one. The Finance Authority for the Housing has created all kinds of weird rules, like you can't have a closet door that's more than 6 feet tall and 38 inches wide for no apparent reason except it's not a stock door and it just makes it more expensive. So there's a lot of weird building requirements. The building requirements for affordable and supportive housing are actually larger dimensions than market rate anywhere in the country. Why do homeless people need a lot of closet space? What are they coming with? Do they really need parking? They're coming out of homelessness. Like, some of it makes zero sense, but these are bureaucrats making this. So building requirements are weird. Sometimes the financing is weird, and they may discount cash flow. So they may pay you to build the building. They may even pay you to maintain the building, but you're not making what you would have made, obviously, if it was a market rate deal. So if you're in it for the profitability and the outflow of cash flow, this is not your type of project. If you have a company that is sustainable on its market rate and for profit, and you want to do something great for the community and that has great PR attached to it, then this is for you. If you need the cash flow coming out of these types of projects, I wouldn't recommend it. I think that's it. Yeah. So this is just an overview of the investment that we did in North Carolina. It was an investment of $8 million. What we promised them, future growth opportunities, future investment, what their money was going into. So I just kind of added that slide because we just finished this round in North Carolina, which is a qualified opportunity zone, which added to the zeal of people investing so that they could park their capital gains and save that money. Look at that. Okay, I'm 2 minutes over, but I blame that on you, Audrey, and all your sponsors.
I think it's fantastic. And are there any other questions? Please, this is a great time to pick Dana's brain. I mean, this is really what she does, and it's a unique. You really you have such a uniqueness to how you pull these projects together in the investor route. And I think it's great that you've covered so many different areas for us because not everybody's familiar with it. So please, are there any other questions? Would anyone like to ask?
I have another one for you. On the public and private partnerships that you were just talking about, it seems like the benefit from those really outweighs the downside as opposed to the other methods. Is there a long-term strategy around maintaining public and private partnerships across subsequent projects? And do you see more companies moving towards that recently?
I would say that the companies are who are truly civic minded and really looking at the greater picture. And I'm not to say that, you know, I don't want to take a self-righteous position here, but we have our factory in North Carolina is booked with market rate projects for the next 2 years. We couldn't take a new customer if we wanted to. Mm-hmm. But we see that there is a national housing crisis. And so we looked at other factories that are underutilized or who have traditionally been making single family homes, which are going to take a hit because of the economic downturn, and said to them, would you be willing to partner with us to make what we design and engineer that will be a template across the country? And everybody said, yeah, terrific. If it could keep our people working and keep the production line active, absolutely. The long-term prospect here is, in our case, where we're owning the land as private developers and we're privately financing the building and the city is master leasing for 20 years or potentially 25 years, we still own that land and we still own that building, which means that at any given time, if I wanted to cash out of that building, I'm selling it with a master lease and it's fully stabilized, right? So I can recap my money just like it was a market rate deal. I've done something good for the community and I've made a coin for me. Or I can potentially, if you have kids or grandkids that you're, you know, looking at the future, I can take that and say, well, in 20 years when the lease expires, I still have that land and I still have that building and I'm going to leave that in trust for my family. So there's definitely an upside to that. I like the community aspect of it, but there's definitely money to be made in it as well. And then I think to the other part of your point is about relationships. You know that everything in this world is about relationships, right? It's about networking and relationships and who you trust and who you work well with and who you don't. If you start to establish relationships with your municipality, we've established really great relationships with HUD on the federal level. Here on the West Coast, in the North Carolina region, we're working on them in the Midwest. And so we're working with them to actually change the requirements, to make modular building more of a preference, to make it more efficient, more cost effective to the taxpayer dollar. So the more you establish those relationships and with your community and with your charitable, your homeless services providers, for example, the more that you can be civically involved in building relationships, the easier the second, third, and fourth project is going to be. The first one is the bear. The first one is jumping through hoops of fire with jazz hands and spirit fingers. I mean, it's, you know, we get it. But once you sort of pave the way and you have your partnerships, then you go back to those people and say, want to do it again? Worked the first time. We house people. We're providing quality housing. We're making money. You're doing what you do. We do what we do. And it just becomes a natural, I hate to use these buzzwords. It becomes a natural synergy. It becomes a partnership that then can be replicated.
That makes a lot of sense. And it seems like, that would be the intuitive move moving forward too.
Yeah, I think that there's something, we could all be a little jaded. And I don't want to say that, it's completely altruistic, but everybody has their, what they give back to community.
Right.
And if you can make money and really make a difference at the same time, well, yay for everybody.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. This was amazing, which I knew it would be. You're just a wealth of information, and you explain it so easily for us to understand. So we really, really appreciate it. On the other note, we do have our next speaker that will be coming at the end of this month, but the date is actually wrong on that, so I apologize. It will actually be on, it will be August 25th that we'll be having Sala Eckard from Microsoft speaking, and she is actually developing a team on using their software platforms to create basically design build opportunities and transforming data into what those buildings and what these capacities can do. So it will be a really interesting conversation with Sala. Thank you to 303 Development, The Art of Construction, Mountain View Window and Doors, Urban Air Living. We're thrilled to have them. We're also thrilled to have Dana with Volumetric Building Companies, and hopefully if you have questions, you wrote down her information and we're able to connect with her. Modular Sure Site is the presenting sponsor on our Offsite Construction Series. There are all different areas of how to get a hold of me. If you didn't get Dana's information, you could always send me a quick message on LinkedIn. I'll make sure to connect you with her, but they're doing some great things. And again, thank you so much, Dana, for all your time today.
Thanks for having me.
All right, well, thank you, everyone. And this will conclude our Offsite Construction Series for the second Tuesday of the month. Thank you for being here. We hopefully will look forward to maybe seeing you at the end of this month for our next talks. I hope that you all have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you.